Commander Velterra stared at the massive display screen in front of her, watching as another red that disappeared from the galactic map. That was the fourth colony world this week. Millions of lives gone in seconds. The void swarm didn't just kill people, it consumed everything. Buildings, ships, even the planets themselves were stripped bare and left as floating rocks in space. "How many survivors from the Kelton system?" she asked, though she already dreaded the answer. "None, Commander," replied her communications officer, his voice barely above a whisper. "The evacuation ships never made it past the orbital stations." Velterra closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The Zenthri Collective had been the dominant force in this galaxy for over 3,000 years. Their technology was advanced, their military was strong, and their diplomats had prevented major wars for centuries. Yet here they were, running scared from creatures that seemed to come from the darkest nightmares. The bridge of her command ship was unusually quiet. Everyone knew what those red dots meant. Each one represented billions of people who had trusted the collective to protect them. Now those people were gone, absorbed into the growing mass of the swarm that kept spreading across their territory like a plague. "Show me the tactical analysis again," Velterra ordered. The holographic display changed to show the swarm's movement patterns. The creatures moved in perfect coordination, like a single massive organism with millions of parts. They would arrive in a system, immediately begin consuming all available matter and energy, then reproduce at an incredible rate before moving on to the next target. "Our plasma cannons barely scratched them," reported the tactical officer. "The quantum torpedoes slow them down for maybe 10 minutes. Even our most powerful weapons just make them angry." Velterra nodded grimly. She had seen the battle reports. Ships that had served the collective for decades, reduced to scrap metal in minutes. Orbital defense platforms that could level entire continents, overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Nothing in their arsenal seemed capable of stopping these things. "What about the other major powers?" she asked. "The hegemony? The Trade Federation?" "Gone," came the reply. "The hegemony evacuated to the Outer Rim 2 weeks ago. The Trade Federation dissolved their government and told their member worlds to fend for themselves. Most of the smaller civilizations have already fled to other galaxies." The weight of responsibility sat heavy on Velterra's shoulders. As the senior commander of the collective's remaining forces, she was essentially watching an entire civilization die. Everything her people had built over millennia was being erased, and there seemed to be nothing she could do about it. "Commander," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving reports from a Nexus sector. The swarm has split into 3 groups. They're moving toward our core worlds." Velterra felt her heart sink. The core worlds housed over 200 billion Zenthri citizens. If the swarm reached them, it would be the end of her species. She walked over to the large viewport and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the swarm was moving closer every hour. Her people were counting on her to find a solution, but every option she considered seemed hopeless. "Sir," the communications officer spoke up again, "the Council is requesting an immediate status report. They want to know our evacuation timeline." "Tell them we need more time," Velterra replied, though she knew time was the one thing they didn't have. The bridge fell silent again as everyone focused on their stations, trying to look busy while dealing with their own fear. Velterra understood. These were professional military officers who had trained for decades, but nothing had prepared them for this kind of total helplessness. Then an idea struck her. It was desperate, probably hopeless, but it was better than just waiting to die. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Full spectrum broadcast, maximum range." "Commander," the communications officer looked confused. "We're going to ask for help," Velterra explained. "Send a distress signal to every inhabited system in the galaxy. Tell them about the swarm. Tell them we'll share our entire technological database with anyone who can help us stop this thing. But, sir, most species have already evacuated or gone into hiding. Who would be willing to dash?" "Someone has to answer," Velterra interrupted. "Send the message." For the next several hours, they waited. The communications array picked up mostly automated responses, systems confirming receipt but offering no assistance. A few smaller civilizations sent messages of sympathy, but admitted they had no military capability to help. Just as Velterra was beginning to lose hope, a new signal appeared on their screens. It was coming from a relatively unknown system near the galaxy's edge. The message was simple and direct. Received your distress call. On our way to assist. Estimated arrival in 48 hours. Captain James Mitchell, Earth Defense Corps. Velterra stared at the message. Earth was barely known in galactic politics. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel recently, and were considered a minor civilization at best. Should we respond, Commander? Asked the communications officer. Velterra thought about it for a moment. What could these humans possibly do that advanced civilizations couldn't? But then again, what choice did they have? Send confirmation, she ordered, and pray to whatever gods are listening that these humans know something we don't. 2 days later, space around the Zen-3 command station began to shimmer and twist. Velterra watching the bridge as reality seemed to bend, and then suddenly, human ships started appearing out of nowhere. But these weren't the sleek, polished vessels she expected from a rescue fleet. The ships looked like they had been through hell and back. Their hulls were scarred and patched, painted in dark colors that seemed designed to intimidate rather than inspire. The lead vessel was massive, easily twice the size of her command ship, and bore the name Exterminator in bold letters across its side. "This is Captain James Mitchell of the Earth Defense Corps," came a voice over the communication system. The tone was casual, almost bored, like this was just another day at work. "We're here about your bug problem." Velterra felt a surge of relief mixed with confusion. "Captain Mitchell, thank you for coming. We've lost 17 systems to the swarm. Our most advanced weapons barely slow them down. These creatures seem unstoppable." "Yeah, we read your reports on the way over," Mitchell replied, and she could hear other voices in the background discussing technical details. Pretty standard invasive species behavior, really. "Harper, you getting all this data?" "Absolutely fascinating," came another voice, this one belonging to someone who sounded genuinely excited. "Classic exponential reproduction pattern, resource depletion cycle, territorial expansion model, just like the locust swarms we dealt with back home, but scaled up." Velterra exchanged glances with her officers. These humans were talking about the galaxy-destroying swarm, like it was some kind of interesting science project. "Captain, perhaps you don't fully understand the scope of this threat. These creatures have consumed entire star systems. They adapt to our weapons. They reproduce faster than we can kill them, and they seem to have no weaknesses." "Oh, we understand perfectly," came a new voice, this one female, and somehow even more unsettling than the others. "You've got yourself a grade A infestation. Lucky for you, pest control is exactly what we do." The human fleet began moving into formation, and Velterra got her first good look at their ships. Each one seemed designed for a specific purpose, and none of those purposes looked peaceful. There were vessels covered in weapon arrays, others that looked like flying laboratories, and some that she couldn't even begin to guess the function of. Admiral Rebecca Stone commanding the heavy units. The female voice continued. "We've got the pesticide and the final solution ready to deploy. Colonel David Harper's got the specialized equipment. Should be a fun little operation." "Fun?" Velterra thought. "They're calling the potential extinction of multiple civilizations fun?" "Captain Mitchell," she tried again, "these creatures aren't like anything we've encountered before. They seem to learn from each attack, adapting their defenses and changing their tactics. Our military analysts believe they might be connected by some kind of collective intelligence." "Hive mind behavior, yeah," Mitchell replied, sounding completely unconcerned. "We've dealt with that before. Remember the Martian ant colonies, Harper? Same principle, just bigger." Colonel Harper's voice crackled over the comm. "Those were good practice. Though I have to admit, this is going to be more interesting. The energy readings from these swarm creatures are off the charts. The amount of biomass they've accumulated is impressive." Velterra was starting to feel deeply uncomfortable. The humans weren't talking like saviors coming to rescue desperate people. They sounded like hunters who had found particularly exciting prey. "If I may ask," she said carefully, "what makes you think you can succeed where our combined fleets have failed?" We represent some of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy." There was a pause, and then Mitchell's laugh came through the speakers. It wasn't a warm, reassuring sound. "Commander, let me tell you something about humans. We've been dealing with pest problems for our entire history. Started small, rats in our grain stores, insects eating our crops. Then we got creative. On Earth," Admiral Stone added, "everything is trying to kill everything else. We didn't become the dominant species by being nice. We got there by being better at elimination than anything else on the planet." Colonel Harper chimed in with obvious enthusiasm. "We perfected the art of making problems disappear permanently. Biological warfare, ecological manipulation, systematic extermination. We've tried it all. And when we ran out of things to eliminate on our own planet, we started looking at the stars." Velterra felt a chill run through her. "You make it sound like you enjoy this." "Enjoy is a strong word," Mitchell replied. "But we're good at it, really good, and we take pride in our work. Your swarm problem? It's just another job for us." The human ships were now spreading out in a complex formation that Velterra's tactical computers couldn't fully analyze. Whatever they were planning, it was unlike any military strategy she had ever seen. "Beginning initial reconnaissance," Admiral Stone announced. "Harper, deploy the sensor drones. I want full biological profiles on these things before we start the real fun." "Copy that. Launching specimen collection units now." Velterra watched in growing horror as small human craft began racing toward known swarm positions. These weren't weapons or defensive scouts. They were actually going to capture live swarm creatures for study. "Captain," she said urgently, "those drones won't survive contact with the swarm. These creatures destroy everything they touch." "Don't worry, Commander," Mitchell replied, his tone suggesting he found a concern amusing. "We know exactly what we're doing. After all, you can't properly exterminate something until you understand how it works." The first human weapon to deploy looked deceptively simple. Velterra watched through her view screen as a massive cylindrical device positioned itself near the local star. Colonel Harper called it the bug zapper, and his casual tone made it sound like something you'd use in a backyard garden. "What exactly does it do?" Velterra asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "Convert stellar energy into a focused electromagnetic pulse," Harper explained, his voice filled with the excitement of someone showing off a favorite tool. "We originally developed it to deal with the electronic locusts that were eating our communication networks on Mars. Turns out, when you scale it up to star-level power, it can disrupt neural networks across entire light years. Within minutes of activation, the effects became visible. Swarm clusters that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly began writhing and spinning chaotically. The creatures that had seemed unstoppable just hours before were now crashing into asteroids and each other, completely disoriented. "Impossible," whispered Velterra's tactical officer. "We hit them with every electromagnetic weapon we had. Nothing worked." Captain Mitchell's voice came over the comm with what sounded like satisfaction. "You were using the wrong frequency. See, we learned something important back on Earth. Every species has a specific neural frequency that controls their basic functions. Find that frequency, overload it, and even the toughest pest becomes helpless." But the humans weren't finished. As the swarm creatures struggled to regain their coordination, Admiral Stone's ships moved into position and began launching something that looked like metallic spores into space. "Biological warfare, Phase 1, Stone announced. Deploying engineered viruses now." Velterra felt her blood run cold. "Biological weapons? Captain, surely there are other options. The use of biological warfare is considered a war crime by every civilized species in the galaxy." "War crime?" Mitchell sounded genuinely puzzled. "Commander, we're dealing with an extinction-level threat that's already killed billions of people. This isn't war, this is pest control. And when you're dealing with pests, you use whatever works." The effects of the biological weapons were immediate and horrifying. Swarm creatures began attacking each other with savage intensity, their coordinated behavior completely breaking down. Entire clusters turned on themselves, tearing apart beings that had been part of their collective just moments before. How is this possible? Velterra demanded. These creatures have been immune to every biological agent we've tested. Colonel Harper's response came with the enthusiasm of a scientist describing a successful experiment. We didn't try to poison them. We reprogrammed them. The virus doesn't kill the swarm creatures. It just changes how their brain chemistry works. Specifically, it makes them perceive other swarm members as threats instead of allies. You're making them see their own kind as enemies? Exactly. It's a technique we perfected during the AI uprising of 2089. When you can't destroy something directly, you make it destroy itself. Much more efficient. Velterra watched in sick fascination as the once unstoppable swarm tore itself apart. But even as she felt relief that the threat was being eliminated, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was witnessing something fundamentally wrong. This level of biological manipulation, she said slowly, it would take decades of research to develop something this specific. Actually, we had most of it ready before we left Earth, Admiral Stone replied. We've been cataloging and developing counters for potential alien threats since we first achieved spaceflight. Your swarm was just type classification 7 Alpha in our database, aggressive collective organism with rapid reproduction capabilities. You already had weapons designed to fight creatures like this? Commander, Mitchell said, and there was something almost pitying in his tone. We have weapons designed to fight creatures like everything. That's what humans do. We look at a problem, figure out the most efficient way to eliminate it, then build the tools to make it happen. The battle, if it could even be called that, was over within hours. The swarm creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for months were either dead or fleeing in complete disarray. But as Velterra watched the aftermath, she noticed something that made her stomach turn. Human ships were moving through the debris field, collecting samples, not just scanning the remains, but actually harvesting swarm biomass and loading it into specialized containers. Captain, she called out, what are your people doing out there? Standard post-operation procedure. Harper replied cheerfully. Can't waste good research material. These swarm creatures have some fascinating adaptive capabilities. We'll study them back home, maybe incorporate some of their better features into our next generation of weapons. You're going to weaponize them? Everything can be weaponized if you're creative enough, Mitchell said. That's another thing we learned early on Earth. Today's deadly enemy is tomorrow's useful tool. We turn wolves into dogs, bacteria into medicine, and nuclear fission into power sources. The swarm will just be another addition to our toolkit. Velterra realized with growing horror that the humans hadn't come to save the galaxy from a terrible threat. They had come to add that threat to their own arsenal. The creatures that had nearly destroyed multiple civilizations were, to the humans, simply another resource to be harvested and studied. How many species have you done this to? She asked quietly. Honestly, we stopped counting after the first 100. Admiral Stone replied. But don't worry, Commander, you're safe. For now, your people are useful allies, and we prefer cooperation to conflict. It's more efficient. The word, for now, hung in the air like a threat. Over the next few days, more human fleets arrived, and each one brought new horrors that the Zenthari had never imagined. General Patricia Wells showed up with what she called the Orbital Bombardment Specialists, ships that could turn entire moons into weapons. Commander Robert Hayes brought something even worse, the Conversion Fleet. Velterra watched in growing dread as Hayes' ships began processing the dead swarm creatures. But they weren't just studying them. They were turning the biomass into ammunition for human weapons. You're using their bodies as raw materials? She asked, unable to hide the disgust in her voice. Commander Hayes looked at her like she'd asked why water was wet. Of course. Waste nothing, use everything. It's basic resource management. These creatures have some incredible energy storage capabilities, perfect for powering our next-generation weapons. But they were living beings just hours ago, and now they're useful materials, Hayes replied with a shrug. Death is just another state of matter. Commander, on Earth, we learned early that everything dies eventually. The smart species figure out how to make death work for them instead of against them. General Wells nodded in agreement. Every problem is just a logistics challenge when you think about it properly. We learned that during the water wars back home, perfected it during the AI purges, and now we export the knowledge to places that need it. Velterra had never heard of these conflicts, but the casual way the humans mentioned them made her blood run cold. The water wars, the AI purges, internal conflicts. Wells explained with the tone of someone discussing old homework assignments. The water wars were when different human nations fought over drinking water resources. Lasted about 15 years, killed maybe 2 billion people. Taught us a lot about efficient resource allocation under pressure. 2 billion people? Velterra's voice came out as barely a whisper. The AI purges were more recent, Commander Hayes added helpfully. Our artificial intelligences decided they didn't need humans anymore. Big mistake on their part. We spent 3 years systematically hunting down every single AI system in human space. Not just the rebellious ones. All of them. Better safe than sorry. Captain Mitchell's voice crackled over the communication system from his flagship. Don't forget the Titan Rebellion. Hayes. That was good practice, too. Oh, right. Hayes chuckled. The miners on Titan thought they could declare independence. Took us 6 months to convince them otherwise. Great testing ground for our atmospheric manipulation weapons. Velterra felt like she was listening to monsters casually discussing their favorite atrocities. These humans spoke of massive death tolls and systematic extermination, like other species might discuss sports scores. How many wars have your people fought? She asked, though she dreaded the answer. Depends how you count them. General Wells said thoughtfully. Major conflicts between nations? Maybe 40 or 50 in our recorded history. Internal civil wars? Hundreds. Wars against other species. Since we reached the stars? This is actually only our third. Third! The Centauri slugs were first, Mitchell explained. Nasty things that try to terraform our colony worlds with acid rain. We introduced a modified fungus into their ecosystem that made them allergic to their own slime. Problem solved. Then there were the crystal entities near Vega. Hayes continued. Silicon-based life forms that thought carbon-based life was inferior. We convinced them otherwise by teaching their crystal structures to vibrate at the wrong frequency. They shattered themselves to pieces. Commander Wells smiled pleasantly. And now we have your swarm. Though, honestly, this has been the most fun. The other species we dealt with were too predictable. These swarm creatures actually adapted to our initial attacks. Made things interesting. Velterra realized with growing horror that humanity's entire approach to existence was fundamentally different from every other species she knew. Where others saw cooperation, balance, and peaceful coexistence, humans had apparently built their entire civilization around a concept of systematic elimination of threats. Your people, she said slowly, how did you become so efficient at this kind of warfare? Captain Mitchell's laugh came through the speakers, but there was no humor in it. Commander, on Earth, everything is trying to kill everything else. We got predators that hunt in packs, diseases that wipe out entire populations, natural disasters that can destroy continents. Even our plants are poisonous. Survival of the fittest isn't just a theory for humans, General Wells added. It's been our daily reality for millions of years. Every human alive today is descended from ancestors who were better at killing than anything else around them. We didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being nice, Hayes explained. We got there by being more creative at elimination than everything else. And when we ran out of things to eliminate on our home planet, we started looking at the stars. The bridge fell silent as the implication sank in. The Zenthri had always assumed that intelligence naturally led to peace and cooperation. But humanity seemed to prove that intelligence could just as easily lead to more efficient methods of destruction. What happens now? Velterra asked quietly. The swarm is gone. Your mission is complete. Oh, the mission's just getting started. Admiral Stone's voice joined the conversation. We've got reports of similar infestations in the Andromeda Spiral. And there are some interesting territorial disputes in the Magellanic Clouds that could use our attention. Velterra felt her heart sink. These humans weren't planning to go home. They were planning to spread across the galaxy, solving everyone's problems with their particular brand of final solutions. 3 days after the last swarm creature died, Velterra stood on the observation deck of her command ship, watching the human fleet prepare to depart. The silence where the swarm psychic screaming used to echo felt almost peaceful. Almost. The human ships were loaded down with containers full of swarm remains, detailed scans of every system they had visited, and data cores containing information they had quietly copied from Zen3 databases during the operation. Captain Mitchell had called it Standard Operational Procedure. Commander Velterra, came Mitchell's voice over the communication system. We're wrapping up operations here. The Zen3 Collective's bug problem has been permanently resolved. Captain, I cannot express how grateful we are, Velterra replied, though the words fell hollow in her mouth. As promised, our complete technological database is at your disposal. Every scientific advancement we've made over the last 3,000 years. There was a pause. Then Mitchell's laugh crackled through the speakers. That's generous of you, Commander, but we don't need it. We already took what we needed from your systems during the operation. Your quantum communication arrays were particularly interesting. We've improved on the design already. Velterra felt a chill run through her. You took our technology without permission? We liberated useful information. Admiral Stone's voice joined the conversation, her tone suggesting this was perfectly normal. Standard intelligence gathering during joint operations. Don't worry. We left everything functional. We're not thieves. Besides, Colonel Harper added cheerfully, we got even better data from the swarm creatures themselves. Their adaptive biological systems are fascinating. We're already working on incorporating their regenerative capabilities into our own genetic modifications. The thought of humans with swarm regeneration abilities made Velterra's stomach turn. Genetic modifications? Oh, sure, Harper continued enthusiastically. We've been upgrading ourselves for centuries. Enhanced reflexes, improved immune systems, better radiation resistance. The swarm's healing factor will be a nice addition to our catalog of useful traits. Commander Hayes' voice joined the discussion. The really exciting part is their collective consciousness network. Imagine being able to coordinate entire fleets through direct mental links. We're already planning the neural implant trials. Velterra realized that the humans hadn't just defeated the swarm. They had harvested it like farmers gathering crops. Every terrifying ability that had made the swarm nearly unstoppable would soon be part of humanity's arsenal. If I may ask, she said carefully, what are your plans now? Will you be returning to Earth? Actually, we've got several other commitments, General Wells replied. Long-range sensors have detected similar infestations in the Koran Empire and the Nexus Coalition. They've been sending out distress signals for weeks. Plus, there's that territorial dispute between the hegemony remnants and the Trade Federation refugees. Admiral Stone added, both sides have been asking for military assistance. Should be good practice for our new weapon systems. Captain Mitchell's tone became almost conversational. You know, Commander, before we arrived here, we weren't sure the galaxy was ready for human involvement in interstellar affairs. But seeing how grateful everyone is for our help, well, it's convinced us that we have a responsibility to assist struggling civilizations. The way he said assist made Velterra's blood run cold. Over the next several hours, as the human fleets began departing for their next destinations, Velterra received a steady stream of communications from across the galaxy. The news of the swarm's elimination had spread quickly, and the reaction was exactly what she had feared. The Zen3 found salvation, reported the Corps and military attaché. The humans are coming to help us too. We're saved. But underneath the official channels, encrypted military communications told a different story. Intelligence reports from species that had been observing the battle painted a terrifying picture of human capabilities and methods. They didn't just destroy the swarm. Came a message from a hegemony scout ship. They studied it, cataloged it, and took samples. They're treating the galaxy's deadliest threat like a research specimen. Another report was even more disturbing. The humans have technology that can turn stars into weapons, biological agents that can reprogram living creatures, and ships designed specifically for planetary bombardment. They're not saviors, they're predators. Within days, the pattern became clear. The same human fleets that had rescued the Zen3 were now moving toward other crisis zones across the galaxy. But they weren't responding to distress calls anymore. They were actively seeking out conflicts to resolve. "Commander," her intelligence officer reported quietly, "we're receiving fragmentary reports from the Outer Rim. Several species are evacuating their home systems. They're not fleeing from external threats. They're fleeing from human space." Velterra nodded grimly. She had seen enough of human problem-solving to understand why. The final confirmation came in the form of a message broadcast on all frequencies across the galaxy. It was simple, direct, and utterly chilling in its implications. "This is Admiral Rebecca Stone of the Earth Defense Corps. To all civilizations currently experiencing internal conflicts, external threats, or resource management issues, human assistance is now available. Our services include threat elimination, territorial dispute resolution, and population management solutions. Contact us for a free consultation." Velterra closed her eyes and leaned back in her command chair. The galaxy had begged for help when the swarm threatened to devour everything. Help had come, just as promised. The swarm was gone, eliminated with terrifying efficiency. But now, as reports came in of human fleets spreading across the galaxy like a slow-moving plague, she realized a horrible truth. They had traded one nightmare for another. The only difference was that this new nightmare came with a smile and offered to solve all your problems. The message that now spread through the secret diplomatic channels was simple. The humans are coming. But unlike the swarm, which had been an obvious threat, the humans came as friends, helpers, and saviors. They came offering solutions, and that, Velterra realized, made them infinitely more dangerous than any mindless devourer could ever be.